Well, good Monday morning to you. Welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Doctors Jim and Jeanine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Callan Lorraine Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. We do this every Monday morning. It is a live call-in show. Our phone lines are 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. And we talk about different subjects and invite you to call in and ask any questions that you might have. Well, kids have gone back to school. And I always like to talk about this time of the year, things to get your kids prepared for that you should keep in mind when your kids are going back to school. So, and preparing the kids in so many different ways. I mean, we have a plethora of questions that already that we have to try to ask. But yeah, I mean, kids, of course, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Right. But a lot of people do have school-age kids, and
right.
most of them are back to school. So that's kind of one of the things we were going to talk about, are things that you need to do for your kids for back to school. When it comes to health, of course, I mean, because that's what we talk about is health. And the healthier your child is, the better they can learn. So that does make a big difference when it comes to school.
Yeah. Well, first of all, one of the important things is a good night's sleep.
Oh, definitely. One of the big things is you want your kids on a sleep schedule. And actually, it's better for adults to be on a sleep schedule
really
as
is.
well.
It's
There's been tons of research that shows if you get up, go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day, it's better for your health because it actually sets your circadian rhythms. And the circadian rhythms being set really does help the immune system. So when you look at it, you really do need to have those kids in bed at a certain time and up at a certain time. And it's even good to do it on the weekends. I know people don't usually do that, but it is good to do that all the time.
Yeah, that routine. Like I say, these circadian rhythms play a big role in our life. And unfortunately, modern lifestyle, a lot of times just doesn't really kind of lend itself to a good circadian rhythm. And we see that all the time. And people, even adults that come in that are having difficulties, in all kinds of ways. It can be anxiety, depression, you name it. It can cause all kinds of attention deficit. All these things can be.
All of it's worsened by not having a good circadian rhythm.
Right.
And people don't even realize, like, your stress hormone, cortisol, definitely goes along with the circadian rhythm.
Right.
And so it's one reason to keep it good is to keep the stress levels down. And so it's just really important on kids to do that and not just let them stay up as late as they want. And
I think one of the other things that they should try to avoid doing is getting on video games.
Oh, definitely. They've shown that.
Well, yeah, they did a big study in like Denmark or somewhere, just published it not too long ago, about your limiting screen times, what they call it. And they showed that the group of people, and children were a big group of this people, but even young adults, the ones that limited their time on that screen, especially before bed, had much better sleep. They functioned better during the day. They had less anxiety. They had less depression. I mean, the list just kept on going. It's like, wow.
To me, at least an hour before you go to bed.
Right, because you get on those games and they just...
they're stimulating.
Yeah, it stimulates your brain.
And you don't want stimulation right before you go to bed.
Right.
Yeah, so that's not actually a good thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. How important is it to build up a child's immune system ahead of time?
Well, ultimately, that's one of the biggest problems we run into with kids going back to school. They've been kind of isolated through the summer, haven't been around their friends and their buddies and so on, and maybe their buddies have been off in Timbuktu or wherever, and they've been exposed to some bugs from a different area, and that's what's caused them some problems there. So when they get back in school, everybody gets together, and now we just kind of pass these germs around.
And everybody knows the best place to get sick is from kids.
Right.
And even adults tend to get sick from their kids and their grandkids, and because they bring home a lot of stuff.
We have a lot of teachers that...
Yeah, we see a lot of teachers that get sick because once they go back to school. So it's not just for the kids, it's also for the teachers out there we're talking about. Right. It's important to keep your immune system up.
And even us adults, because if you got a child that goes back to school, they bring that home to you, now you're sick. So it's like, oh, okay, so this is not
like
just
the classroom is like a petri dish.
It is. It definitely is.
All kinds of stuff that is stirring in there.
It definitely is. So there's a lot of things. We'll talk about some of the things that you can do for the immune system.
Right.
One is take your basic vitamins. Vitamin D. We talk about vitamin D a lot.
Yeah.
Make sure you're getting adequate vitamin D. D can be tested. if you don't know if you're getting enough or not. Taking just a massive amount isn't always a good idea either, because we are seeing more people than ever have too high vitamin D. So that's not good either. So you really want to get your D level checked and get it at an optimal level, because the optimal level is what helps the immune system.
And we can even do that, and this is for children too.
Right.
I mean, it's not just for adults. Yes,
we actually, almost all kids that we check their vitamin D, I can say almost all of them are low.
Yeah.
Kids are not outside the way they used to.
No, because they're playing video games inside.
Yep, exactly. And if they are, they have on sunscreen, and sunscreen blocks vitamin D production. So we are seeing a lot of vitamin D deficiency in kids, and that's one of the big things for the immune system. Also, zinc and vitamin C. Those, zinc, D, vitamin C, all real important for the immune system. Yeah.
And a biggie is probiotics. We talked about this, ad infinitum, and we talk about, some more 70–80% of your immune system is in that GI tract, in that gut,
right?
In those good bugs that are in our gut, and if we don't, take care of that, and of course along with that, that means we should limit the amount of the packaged processed foods and so on, because that destroys our microbiome. Our microbiome is probably one of the most beneficial things we've got going for us. And we can really mess it up.
Question from a caller: risk and benefits for going on a statin.
Well, that's not our area. So I always say the best thing to do is to ask your pharmacist, because they do know the medications better than we are. Yeah. We definitely have alternatives to statins. Yeah. I will tell you about that. We do have a product called a red rice yeast extract, that the one that we have is more of a pharmaceutical grade that is just sold to doctors, that is very good at lowering cholesterol. It has less risk of the pain everywhere. It has less risk of causing liver problems. It's less, so there's a lot less risks, and it does work in most cases. Even statins don't work in some cases. So, it depends on the person, but we do have an alternative.
Yeah, because I'm on that.
Yeah, we do have an alternative to a statin. So that's what I'm going to say, is there's actually benefits to an alternative. Yeah.
Yes.
But just don't stop something just because you.
No.
Right. We are not. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, we're talking about getting the kids ready to go back to school, and it is that time. They're all watch out for the school buses out there too. But we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more of your questions. And we're talking this morning about getting your kids ready to go back to school. Of course, most of them have already gone back to school, but hey, it's early, so you can still get them going there. We talked about some of the supplements. We talked about how they needed some D, a good multivitamin,
zinc and C and D, and
probiotics.
And we talked about probiotics. Probiotics are 70–80% of your immune system, so you definitely want to give the kids probiotics. And then there's something called arabinogalactin, which is a prebiotic.
Yeah.
So
that's the powder stuff you said you can give to a baby.
Yeah, you can give it's so safe you can give it to a baby, and it feeds your good bacteria, but at the same time it boosts your immune system. So we have a lot of people that give arabinogalactin, especially to kids that get sick often.
Yeah.
And if one thing that we use for the immune system that's really good is something called DMG, or dimethylglycine. Now DMG has a couple good benefits. It helps the immune system, but it's also been shown to help with calming kids down and learning. And it helps with brain function and increases oxygen to the brain.
I was going to say, it increases the oxygen. The hemoglobin that carries our oxygen, it actually increases the amount of oxygen that can bind to that hemoglobin. So you get better oxygenation to the brain and everything else in between.
And it's another one that is so safe you can give it to a day-old baby.
Yeah.
DMG is in every living cell of every living thing. And so DMG is a very, very, very safe alternative to things that actually help with the brain function. And there's many other things that help that as well.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about diet. What should kids avoid?
One of the biggest
show, isn't it?
One of the biggest things you need to do, especially with kids when they're getting ready to go to school, and we see this a lot where folks will say, well, they'll eat some cereal or something like that for breakfast. Bad idea. They need protein. Kids are growing, they need protein. So we need to be feeding them some sort of protein and some good fats. And then from there, maybe some fruits, vegetables, whatever along with it, but you've got to get that protein in there. You can't overemphasize protein, especially in kids.
Yeah, and also you don't want packaged processed food.
Right.
And that cereal is the most packaged processed food that you can have.
Yeah.
And so you want to start looking at what you're feeding them, and don't give them any of these pre-made little breakfast things that have tons of ingredients that you don't know what it is. they shouldn't be eating it. And things with dyes and colors and preservatives, it's not good. So like he said, give them scrambled eggs. That's protein, good fat, and add some blueberries. Give them some antioxidants. So that's the kind of stuff that you need to be feeding the kids before you go to school, not the junk that makes you sluggish and tired later and makes the brain not work very well.
Yeah, what we find a lot of people do is if when you start looking at what they're feeding themselves and the kids, a lot of sugar involved. Okay, well, sugar will make you feel good for say 30 minutes or so, and then you're going to crash. And that's what happens to the kids. And when we start talking about the proteins and the good fats that they need, if you're going to give them dairy, don't do low fat or no fat dairy. Oh my God, no, that's sacrilegious. Fats are fine. Actually, some of the best fats are in whole fat milk. Dairy.
And that's one of the things that I.
And you do want to do organic if you do dairy.
You do want
If you want to do dairy, you want to go organic.
I used to do 2%.
Yeah.
And then of course y'all said no, and I've been back to whole milk.
Right.
Which is a whole lot better.
Oh, tastes much better.
It does.
And it tastes a lot better. And it's got some.
See through it.
It's got some really good fats in it. One of the biggest problems we have, if you go back and look, when we went low fat, 1974 and 77. 74 started at 77. They passed a big thing. McGovern was involved in it, all that stuff for us old guys that remember him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when they started that low fat, no fat religion that's been going on in our government for a long period of time here, that's when you can see the increase in diseases.
Yeah.
Everything. I'm talking about from diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's. Everything is just going up, and it's simply because what we're feeding ourselves, and especially the kids, because these kids are growing. They've got to have protein to grow, and they need good fats. The good fats are going to help that brain function and everything else. And so it's just important to really get them, especially at a starting point
and speaking
in the morning.
Of fats are so important for brain function.
Oh God,
and your brain, you're sending the kids to school so they can learn, and so you need good fats. I think most kids should be on fish oil.
Omega-3s.
And so omega-3s. Mm-hmm. We have a liquid that we use a lot in kids because it's easy to give them because it's in a liquid form and it's not so big. But omega-3s, great for brain function. So people need to start giving their kids omega-3s because they usually don't get enough in the diet. Get them off of packaged processed foods and start feeding them a little bit better, definitely before they go to school in the morning.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the most, once you actually have that sugar in the morning, then you actually have a big spike in sugar, and then you tend to have a fall. That fall can make headaches, it makes drowsiness, it makes confusion, it makes all kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things you do need. I mean, years ago, I never forget this one little girl. Her sugar, she was so bad that they thought she was having seizures in class. And so the mom had brought her to us, and we had looked and we had done some testing, and it actually was, well, she also went to the neurologist, and they said it was blood sugar. We said it was blood sugar, so everybody decided it was blood sugar, so it was hypoglycemia. We changed her diet. We actually told the parents what to feed her, what not to feed her, and after about 2 weeks of doing the new diet, her teachers come and ask the parents, what drug is she on? I have never seen a kid's brain change so dramatically in 2 weeks. And they were like, we're not giving her anything. We changed her diet.
Just food.
So that shows you that that's how big of a difference it can make in school, because the teacher said that it was a different kid, brain-wise. And that was 2 weeks of changing her diet. But I mean, her parents were strict too. They didn't let her do it. I mean, when I told them not to do it, they listened. Not everybody is that strict and listens that strictly, but they did. Yeah. And it made a huge difference in her brain.
Yeah, we talk to people that do this all the time, themselves, even some of the adults. They're having the same kind of issues that little girl was having. They feel great for about an hour and then they crash. And we change their diets around and get them into that, making sure they get the protein, make sure they get the fats. Those are the two things you need to start with. The human body can make its own carbohydrates if it needs it. It's called gluconeogenesis. Look it up, okay? Google it. But if you don't need those things, and if you keep feeding it to us, and we need protein because we need those amino acids, and we need those good fats because cell membranes and everything else, all kind of stuff happens there. If we don't get that stuff, we start deteriorating from the inside out. So think about it. I mean, if you don't have what it takes to build muscles and things like that.
And the earlier you start, the better, because when kids learn good habits as a kid, and different eating habits, and kids do tend to like what they're fed.
Right.
Even adults tend to like what they had as a kid.
Right.
So you really want to start good diets young.
Yeah, because
You don't wanna
Mississippi is
wait.
#1 in childhood obesity.
Exactly.
I know.
And we are definitely seeing, when we do lab work, we are seeing kids with prediabetes and diabetes at very young ages.
Yeah.
Way younger than you used to see.
It's scary. They're so young, it's scary. You're talking about 10-year-olds and even younger. We've seen younger. And when you start talking about a 10-year-old or a 7 or 8-year-old that's got the prediabetes stuff going on,
And
man,
insulin
that's
resistance already at that
scary.
age, they're
Yeah.
going to have problems really young.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Talking about getting your kids ready for going back to school, even though they're back to school already, it's, not too late.
Right.
We'll finish it up and talk about the importance of blood work for your children in just a moment. And welcome back, talking about getting your kids going for school and things you need to do. What about kids that have attention issues?
Something that we've been using for years, and it works extraordinarily well. It's a simple amino acid called L-theanine, and it works great. I wish I'd had it when I was in school. It would have probably been a lot better for my
It
teachers.
actually
for sure.
helps anxiety and
Yes.
focus.
Yes.
So that's kind of what it does mostly.
Yes.
Now, if we also use DMG, which I mentioned for the immune system, but it also, because of the oxygen carrying capability, it also helps attention as well. And then, you start getting into a little bit more severe problems, then we do have other things for that. It depends on what medications. Don't just go give it to them, because you do have to see what medication someone's on, because if they're on medications, you can't do certain things. Now, theanine you can do with any medication. DMG, any medication. So that's the good thing about theanine and DMG. Can be used with anything. But like their 5-HTP, we do use that in kids, especially if they tend to be depressed as well and they're not on medication. We have tyrosine, we have DopaBoost, we have a lot of different things that actually help the neurotransmitters in the brain. So there are so many things that you can do nutritionally to help with those problems.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about blood work. I mean, is that something that even young kids can have done?
We do it a lot in kids. Now, we're not saying every kid just needs a full panel,
No.
but if a kid is having a problem, they definitely do.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Kids that are growing normally, everything's functioning fine, probably not. But I mean, occasionally, if they start developing any kind of problems,
Right.
That's when we've got to dig in. You got to find out what's wrong. It's just a simple thing of getting in there, see what's going wrong, because those things, the things that show up in the lab work can be fixed.
Yeah. The expanded panel is what we probably do mostly on kids that come
Right.
in. And what we see most is vitamin D deficiencies, B12 deficiencies, high cortisol. We see so many kids with high stress hormone, even if they're younger. It used to only be in the teenagers and 20-year-olds. Now we're seeing it in actually middle school kids. I mean, we're seeing younger. They're stressed out. So kids tend to be more stressed out nowadays, and there are things that help that. Actually, that theanine does help cortisol as well.
It does.
So there's a lot of things that you can do to help it so they don't have so much issue and so much stress and feel so bad all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And one other thing too, well, we got a question here. What is a good protein supplement?
Food.
Food. Eating your protein is your best bet.
Obviously, yeah.
Now
That's the best.
there are protein drinks, and we do have a whey protein that we have, and you always want to, on the protein supplements, if you're gonna do a powder, you want to look and make sure there is no artificial sweeteners, and a lot of them have artificial sweeteners, and make sure they're not loaded with sugar, because that's the two things you got to look for, and make sure there's no dyes and chemicals and stuff added on top of it.
And when you're doing proteins, if you're going to supplement proteins, let's say that, for instance, for whatever reason, you're not eating enough meat to get your proteins that way. People say, well, beans have very little protein. They've got a little bit, and it's good, but it's just not enough. So if you're going to add to it, you need a variety of proteins. Like we'll do the whey, which comes from your milk products. There's a pea protein that they've got, a brown pea that is loaded with protein. So we'll do something like that, and just, you want to vary it. You just don't want to do the same thing day in, day out, day in, day out.
Because different proteins have different amino acid complexes.
That's the key.
So you're better off altering your proteins and not eating the same exact thing every day.
Right.
So what all has protein? You have your eggs have some. You have your chicken, meat, pork, fish, shrimp. I mean, those are all things with protein. So, and people always say, well, what can I eat for breakfast? I said, you can eat a piece of chicken for breakfast if you want to. You don't have to have breakfast food. But people are so used to having to have breakfast food,
Yeah.
and you don't have to. And you can also make an omelet and put some sort of chicken or something in your omelet.
Sure.
Good hard-boiled egg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
eat
I
horrible.
love
Yeah.
hard-boiled eggs.
On
Yeah.
eggs, you got about 7 to 8 grams protein, depending on the size of the egg. So you probably need a couple of them at least. But that's kind of things you have to look for to get your protein. And we do have the protein powders.
Yeah.
I always suggest getting it from your food if you can first.
And also, if your child starts having some issues in school, maybe their grades drop, and check their vision. Speaking personally,
Yeah.
it happened to me when I was in the 3rd grade. I started having problems seeing the board
Yeah.
and everything
Yeah.
because I started,
Right.
and I ended up needing glasses.
Right. So,
So don't ignore that.
always have your kids' eyes checked if you start suspecting problems, and also the hearing. So, I mean, if you're suspecting problems, get it checked.
Yeah.
Because there are things you can do for that. I mean, they can give you glasses, they can help with the hearing, they can do all kind of stuff. So, you want to just check things. And if the kid's having a lot of attention deficit, having a lot of anxiety, get the lab work checked.
Yeah.
Let's see what's deficient. Let's see what they can do, because B12 deficiency is another one that we see, and that affects the neurological system a lot. So,
Big time.
Yep. Yep.
So, and don't forget, you can also go on the YouTube channel and subscribe to their YouTube channel.
Right.
You get a lot of great information on there.
Yeah.
There's a plethora of things and a lot of the other past programs, in case you missed them, that you can watch on there as well. Facebook, be sure you go on and sign up for Facebook. Or you have any questions or looking for something in particular that we've talked about this morning, you can go to their website at doctorsnutrition.com. If you live out of the area or you know somebody that does, pass that along to them as well.
Right.
So anyway, we have your weekly special for you right now.
Yeah, this week is going to be the DMG that we talked about. It's dimethylglycine. DMG is a lot easier to say. And we have it in a chewable tab and or a liquid. And believe it or not, the chewable tabs are not bad at all. But I have a lot of adults that actually kind of like the liquid. They like the taste, whatever, Okay, go figure. So, but and the liquid's great. You can give it, like say, we've given it to, infants. I'm talking about infants. So it's good, and it stimulates that immune system, helps in so many ways. It's not even funny. Really is.
Okay, someone has a question. What would you recommend for a person who has PKU?
Well, you definitely got to stay away from phenylalanine. So
Yes.
that's one that you got to do very specific proteins. So
Right.
you can call our store and we'll go more specific into that. But PKU is a very specific genetic problem
Right.
that staying away from phenylalanine is definitely part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, and
And we did want to tell everybody that we are at our location and at the store. From now on Mondays, we won't be until 12.
Right.
Because when we leave here, we're going to be taping for YouTube. We're going to be doing a whole lot more on YouTube. And if you want to see it, go subscribe, ring the bell. They'll tell you when we got stuff new. But we are going to be taping every day after this show for all that. And we will be in at noon on Mondays.
On
So I
Monday.
just wanted to tell people so they don't expect us to be there at 10. It'll be noon on Mondays.
okay, but Tuesdays you're there. regular
Tuesday and
time,
Thursday,
Thursdays at
normal-
regular
normal-
time.
Normal
Yep.
time.
And of course, Dr. Bull is there during the week
Yep,
as well.
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And all the ladies are there are really good about answering any kind of questions that you might have.
That's right.
So anyway, have yourself a wonderful week. Next week,
We're talking about neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
neurotransmitters.
That kind of goes along with this, yeah. Brain
Okay,
function.
great. Anyway, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Monday morning for the Doctor's Nutrition Show. Bye-bye.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.